All right, welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. We're going deep today, deep into Psalm 46 from the Bible.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and specifically the New Living Translation from YouVersion.
Yeah.
Now, this psalm, it's kind of interesting. Well, first of all, it's a song,
Right.
and it was written by the descendants of Korah.
Okay.
And originally it was meant for soprano voices. So
Really?
yeah, kind of cool. And it's all about refuge, strength, and God's power in the midst of chaos. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Why this ancient text? What does it still have to say to us today? What do you think? Let's just jump right into verses 1 through 3.
Sounds good. Yeah, these opening lines, they really set the stage.
Yeah.
God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. And I think what really grabs you, it's the scale of the trouble described. I mean,
Right.
we're talking earthquakes,
Wow. Yeah.
mountains collapsing into the sea. Like, imagine that.
Oh.
The very ground beneath your feet just giving way. It's just utter chaos.
Yeah. It's so interesting how they use those kinds of like natural disasters, these massive forces that we still can't even control today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's that lack of control, that feeling of being overwhelmed that really resonates.
Yeah.
We may not face literal earthquakes every day,
Right.
but we all experience those moments where it feels like our world is falling apart. So there's something very universal about that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the psalm goes on to talk about roaring and foaming oceans. Like everything's in turmoil, mountains trembling as the water surges. And then in the midst of all this idea of God as a constant refuge.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key, right? It's that contrast. The world might be falling apart around you, but God is still there, steady, unwavering.
So what do you think it is about this idea that resonates so deeply? I mean, it's such a powerful image.
I think it speaks to that fundamental human need for security. We crave stability, especially when everything feels uncertain. And these images, they tap into our primal fears, that fear of the world unraveling. So by placing God as this anchor in the midst of it, it offers this incredible sense of hope.
Yeah, it really does. And then we have a shift, verses 4 and 5. It moves to this completely different scene, right? We have like a river. And this river brings joy to the city of God, the sacred home of the Most High. So we go from this huge chaos to
Peace.
Yeah, it's such a stark contrast.
It is. And I think that's intentional.
Yeah.
You know? It's like after all that turmoil, the psalmist is saying, hey, look, there's still peace to be found. There's still joy. And that river, it's not just any river.
Yeah.
It symbolizes this divine presence, this life-giving force that flows from God.
And then there's this emphasis on God dwelling in this city, protecting it from the break of day. Like it's always there.
Absolutely. It's like an oasis of calm in the middle of the storm.
Yeah.
A place where you can find shelter and security no matter what's happening outside.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's almost like a reminder that even when everything around you is chaos, there's still this center of peace and stability.
Right. And I think that leads to an interesting question. How do we find or create that sense of inner peace when we're facing our own storms?
Right. Yeah. And then verse 6, it kind of zooms back out again. We get this global perspective.
Yeah, the scope gets huge again. The nations are in chaos and their kingdoms crumble. God's voice thunders and the earth melts. It's a powerful image, isn't it?
It really is. And it's so interesting because all these human power structures, these kingdoms that seem so powerful and important,
They crumble.
yeah, they're shown as so fragile compared to this one divine voice. Like everything just melts away.
And it makes you think about the different kinds of power at play here.
Right.
We have human power, which can be so destructive. And then we have this divine power, which is ultimately transformative.
And that leads us into this recurring theme in verses 7 and 11. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. This title, Lord of Heaven's Armies, that feels really significant.
It is. And I think understanding the historical context helps us grasp its full meaning. In ancient Israel, the Lord of Heaven's armies was seen as the commander of both heavenly and earthly forces. So it emphasizes God's ultimate sovereignty over everything.
So it's not just about personal comfort and refuge, but also about a God who's in control on this cosmic level.
Exactly. And then in verses 8 and 9, we're called to come, see the glorious works of the Lord. And what are these glorious works? Well, it specifically mentions how God brings an end to wars. He breaks the bow, snaps the spear, burns the shields.
So he's actively dismantling the tools of war, establishing peace.
Exactly. And this suggests that true peace comes not through human effort, but through divine intervention.
Yeah. And then finally we get to verse 10, and this is a powerful one. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. And I think that command to be still really stands out.
It does. Why do you think that's so important, especially in the context of all this chaos and divine power?
Well, we've seen all this turmoil, all this talk of crumbling mountains and melting earth, and then we get this call to stillness. It's like God saying, hey, in the midst of all this, the most important thing is to just stop, be still, and recognize who I am.
So it's about shifting our focus from all the external chaos to this internal recognition of God's power.
Exactly. It's saying that true understanding and recognition of God comes not through frantic action, but through a posture of stillness and trust.
So ultimately, what do you think the psalm is trying to tell us? I mean, it's a lot, but what's the core message here?
I think it's a message of hope and resilience. It's saying that even when the world around us feels like it's falling apart, there's this constant source of refuge and strength in God. And ultimately, God's power brings peace, and it demands our stillness, our recognition.
Yeah, and it's a message that's as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. I mean, we all face our own versions of earthquakes and turbulent waters. So how do we be still in the midst of all that? How do we find that inner city of God in the midst of our own chaos?
That's a powerful question to reflect on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
All right, thanks everyone.
See ya.
See ya.